Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Imprint. I'm very excited to share today's guest with you, Lindye Galloway. She is an interior designer based in Newport Beach, which is in Southern California. And she has gone from having no design experience to running a full-service interior design studio specializing in high-end residential and commercial projects across the US. She has had her work featured in Architectural Digest and the Wall Street Journal, on HGTV, and many other places. She's gone from being a self-taught designer to now having not only her interior design studio, but a shop as well that is going through great growth. I know you're going to get so much value out of this conversation. Lindye was really honest and open and very generous with sharing about her journey to knowing what to charge clients, how to grow her business, and how she has hired along the process. Please enjoy my conversation with Lindye Galloway. Hi, Lindye. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you because I feel like you are going through phenomenal growth with your business. And I think so many people who listen to this podcast, they love interiors. They either are working as an interior designer or they want to work as an interior designer. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you to learn what you have learned on your journey, what it's looked like, and get some perspective on that and get some insight. But I always like to start these conversations kind of at the beginning. And the beginning in these conversations often starts with your childhood and getting a bit of a sense of were you creative as a child? And because I find that when I speak to various people, there are these threads in their life and it makes sense, the journey that they've gone on, but we don't always know in the journey or in the process that, where's this heading in? And I don't always know. So can you share for us a little bit about where you grew up, the type of home that you grew up in, and those early years before you having to make a decision about what am I going to do after school? Can you just share a little bit of a light on your journey in those chapters?
Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to be here with you, and I've admired everything that you've been up to on your journey. So it's very fun to be in the same room as you here. But yeah, my journey has been a long one and kind of had twists and turns that, never saw coming, but in the best way. So growing up, I actually had my father is a home builder, but he's more with master plan communities, and what we do is more, custom homes. But I did grow up with being around that. My dad's had his company for 35 years, and he and a buddy like flipped a home before flipping homes was like a thing like 40 years ago. And so then my whole life we have been immersed in just that kind of realm. And because of what my dad does, he and my mom loved to move. So every 4 years we would move, and everyone thought that I was like an army kid or something. I'm like, no, we would literally move up the street. Like we would like throw our stuff in a wagon and like wheel it up when we were moving, because they loved this community that we grew up in, but they loved to move and have new projects. So I definitely grew up around it. Never thought it would be something that I would end up in. But it's cool to look back now and to see some of that thread. And then, believe it or not, I actually also got a job at an interior design firm when I was in high school. And I only took it because they were going to pay me $10 under the table. And at the time, that was so much money for a high schooler. So I took the job, and it's really funny because literally my main job was to unwrap lamps. And now when like we have to unwrap a lamp, it's like it all just comes back to me. The phone, the styrofoam and everything like that. But yeah, I worked in the showroom, and so it's so interesting that I thought I'd be on a totally different path, but then how much life just ends up circling back around.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes so much sense. I mean, that's why I love hearing about people's childhoods, because I think that it informs so much of our journey. And when you look back, you go, it
Yeah.
makes complete sense. But in the process, sometimes you might be questioning, where's this leading to? So, what about when you were getting to that point of thinking, what am I going to do as a job when I leave school, when I leave high school? Am I going to go to college? Am I going to get a job in interior design? What was your thought process then? And what were your next steps?
Yeah, I love it. I feel like we never get to go this far back in podcasts and people's journeys. So I love that we get to kind of, go through the early years. So when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college. I just had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took the easiest path possible as a communications major, which, my parents joke is like, well, it was mostly just like a social type of endeavor. So I had a really fun college experience at a small private school. And there they didn't have anything in interiors or they had an art program, but there wasn't anything that specialized in what I'm doing now. So I went for communications, which of course has come in handy along the way with clients and the different business ventures. But when I left, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do, but I had been working in events at the school, so I ended up sticking around there for a little bit. And I would say there's something similar about like the pace, and I was doing event design, and so there was like some crossover and some nuggets that I was able to take with me from that path. And then I ended up in the wedding and event design industry for a while. So I was there for a few years and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. But that's just where I sort of landed. I very much look back and I'm like, I was for being such a planned person that I am today, I could not have been less planned in the beginning stages of my life. Like I just was floating wherever something, found me. So that's always, that's just kind of how it happened in the beginning.
And so then, how did you then get into interior design? What was the shift that happened to actually start doing this type of work?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like there was a day, it was a Saturday, and I remember it clearly. I remember that I had a wedding, and I just was like, this isn't like what I'm passionate about. And every job you have, you're gonna have moments where you're passionate and moments where you're not. But there was just this realization on that day that that just wasn't the path for me anymore, and that I wanted to explore something different. At the same time, we were also thinking about having a family. My husband and I met in college, and we got married at 21 and 23. So at that point, we've been together for a while, and we were like, okay, maybe we want to start a family. And we were kind of ships passing in the night. So for a variety of reasons, I was like, okay, I'm going to like close out this chapter of my life. And then I had our first son, and my husband will tell you otherwise, but trust me, this is the truth. When we were in the hospital and I'm like giving birth, he's like, "Hey, there's this house. I think it'd be fun to go check it out." And I was like, I'm sleep deprived, and I'm just like, "Okay, sure, let's go check it out." And so this house I still hold so much like love and appreciation for. It was a home in Eastside Costa Mesa, in California, Southern California, and it just needed a lot of love. And it was a house that sat there for a long time with no one that could come along and see the vision for it. And I walked in there with our 3 week old baby, and I was like, okay, like let's do this. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I had no real intention of like making that my career. I just thought it would be like a great, something to do. And so we did the remodel. And from that, I was posting on Instagram back when Instagram was like way easier to, build and get attention from. And I just was posting the process and posting like Theo, my son, and I in the ergo, like, picking tiles and doing all the things. And from there, I had a couple people that I knew through kind of my network that reached out, and they were like, "Hey, would you ever consider doing my home? I know this isn't like something you're doing professionally, but would you do it?" And I was like, kind of sparked an idea. And they had whole homes, and I was like, let's dive in and try this. So the first year I had two projects, and I really just had to learn the ropes because I had no schooling, no business background in any of it. I was just trying to figure it out, and bless those, souls. And also, there was apparently a decent enough experience because we just finished our first client's second home. So it was really fun, again, full circle, to be on that journey with them, a handful of years later to do their second home. But in that process, I knew very clearly that if I was going to do this, I just wanted to be able to work on full homes where we're taking it from the finishes to furniture. And it ended up being a bigger bite to, take, given that I had no experience in it. But I sort of just decided that I would figure it out along the way. And, I had my dad to, call and kind of help me through some things, but he's not an interior designer. So there was still a path that I had to forge and kind of figure out. And then from there, I mean, I just kept posting it on Instagram, and then I just kept getting more and more people. And after that, I was like, okay, this is a real business. We're doing this. Let's like get fully, set up here. And I think that that was another moment where like I kind of just went with the flow and something dropped in my lap, but this time it felt like the most organic and natural and perfect thing for me. And I was really grateful that, I mean, without that house that my husband talked me into go seeing when I was, given birth, then I wouldn't have had the experience in the business that we have today. So it's been a very unexpected journey along the way.
Yeah. So what I want to ask, because, like I said, you have had this, phenomenal growth and you work on these amazing projects. And, that's where so many people aspire to be in their business. But often that getting that first client can
Mhm.
sometimes be the biggest challenge. So for you, was it somebody that sorry, was it somebody that you knew and had a good relationship with already, or how did you go about getting that first client? And did you charge that first client, or did you kind of recognize that, look, I just want to get a few rungs on the board, I want to see if I can do this again for somebody else? What did that look like for you? Can you just kind of unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, what's interesting is I feel like I actually had more of a hurdle getting the third, fourth, fifth client. The I kind of just got lucky on these first ones, and I think they were looking for someone. I the very first client I knew from the wedding world, so it was someone that I knew pretty well, and we got closer through the process. And then another couple was through, again, some of my acquaintances, and I feel like that was one of those things that just fell into my lap. And once I got that experience and then had those photos, and then one of them is very big in their industry, and so it got picked up, and I kind of had like this lucky like star alignment for that first go. And I also still remember like the many hours that I poured into it. Like I was like, I am not going to do this halfway. I'm figuring out, I'm basically going to pretend like I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to figure it all out. And so this project that was the first one. I mean, it's so different than this style, almost 10 years later for me. But I think that there is so much that I can appreciate about that first project and what it really kind of did for me. And I think it was like luck mixed with a lot of hard work. But I feel like from there, then it was really, how do I get those next clients? Now, I did charge both of those clients. And at that point, I'd been like, okay, I am a business. I wasn't treating it too much like, I'm a very like all in. I'm a risk taker, so I was just like, okay, people want me to do this for them. Let's go all in. So at that point, I did charge them, not nearly what we charge now, but was also, that I really essentially looked at my time. I was mostly concerned about just like, how do I make my time feel worth it? And I have a family and all of these things, so I wanted to make sure that like if I'm working at midnight, after I put my kiddo down, that it's worth my time. And I still think it's incredibly valuable. I know this is a question that I get asked a lot, is like, do you charge on those first ones? And I think there's a yes and a no to both of that. I think that you need to build a portfolio, and you need to build that look. You need to have things to post on Instagram. But I also think that if you're good at what you do and you feel like you're going to make a mark, then it's important to charge for that time, or charge for some bit of it. But I think it's kind of this both and I think for me, the big key though to those first projects being good for my portfolio was that they were projects that, I charged for, but they were full homes. So it wasn't like just a kitchen. It was this, full scope, which really helped me kind of get on the map in the first place.
Okay, so in relation to that, I've got a couple, well, about five questions, but anyway, I'm going to go through them one at a time. So one is
Okay.
when
Sure.
when you were charging, so you decided, okay, I'm going to charge these people. When you were trying to work out the hourly rate for that, were you looking at, well, I was earning this amount as in my events role, and were you kind of just using that as a guideline? Like, how did you actually work out what to charge them for that hourly rate? What did that look like? And obviously, this is at the beginning, and we all start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you in on a secret. My event business wasn't doing that great. So it was only up from there. So I it was another reason that I decided to exit, because for me, what I wanted to accomplish, the lifestyle I wanted to have, it wasn't there was a kind of a stopping point for that. And so I decided that with where I wanted to be, I needed to kind of shift as well. And yeah, that last year, it was partly like just the timing of the economy, but it was a tough last year in the business. And so anyway, it was only going to be better. I was only going to feel more rich from there. So I did charge I don't even remember exactly what I charged, but I remembered it was kind of based on that. I mean, you have to look at your life and be like, what do I need to survive, and then decide if you've got like an extra income from, maybe a full-time job, or side hustle that you've got going on. But I think that it's important to strike that balance, to be attractive enough to someone who's got a great project, but also valuable enough to that person to want to pay for your services as well. But I think in the beginning, that's just where you got to start. Like, you got to start lower, because you don't have as much experience, you don't have as many connections. That's just like the nature of any kind of business that you get into, especially when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting your own business. You're going to have those early days that you are, kind of scraping by sometimes. Or I remember, working out of Starbucks, because at the time we didn't have any kind of office. It was just me and, the lineup of other entrepreneurs at Starbucks. So yeah, I think those beginning days can be a little hard to know what to charge, but you still need to value your time, and make it worthwhile, and fun for you. And eventually that wears out if you feel like all you're doing is working for free.
Yeah, no, completely. And so, what I also want to ask you about is, again, this is something that comes up a lot with people that I speak to, and they will say, I'm trying to get these clients, but how to get clients, because you said that you did these full projects, how to get them to be confident of relinquishing, in a way,
Mm,
the control over the process. Like, often, particularly when it's people within your network, if you're a creative
mm,
person, and lots of people have that I can do it myself kind of attitude. So how
yeah.
were you able to either find those people, or really help them with their projects to see the value in what you could bring?
Yeah. So I have realized that my perfect ideal client is someone who doesn't know how to do it and doesn't want to know how to do it. Someone that half the people that will be in sales calls with are like, when we're trying to decide if we're going to work together, they will say like, I have no idea to do what you do, and I'm busy with, my life, and it's a whole other area that I could never do. And so I think that when you're working with people that understand the value, because sometimes they do like, maybe their line of work is really valuable, and they know that what they bring to the table is really uniquely different. And so I think that what was the question again? Is that allowed to happen?
No, 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 no. You're saying it completely right. Yeah, I mean, it's this idea of, like, some clients want to really, get involved and sort of not
Yes.
give you the creative control, versus finding these people who actually value and say, "You do it." Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You do it. I think you've kind of answered that with the way that you've approached that. So I will ask you then. As you mentioned, you didn't go to design school. And again, this comes up a lot with people I've got a group coaching program called
Mhm.
Design and Grow, and this comes up a lot with people, or people even when I'm just talking generally, that, oh, I didn't go to design school. How can I do these projects? Or feeling like you need to get a million qualifications before you even start. So,
Mhm.
can you talk us through that? How did you do these big projects without having that formal education component? And and how has that evolved as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question because I think that that is a hurdle that you can feel in the very beginning. And it's a real hurdle. I mean, when you are on a construction site and you don't know what all the terminology is, that's going to hold you back. So I think that first is to make sure that you can feel confident that you can bring something to the table for them. You cannot expect them to be confident in handling their project or doing things for them unless you feel really confident in that. And so I think there are courses that you can take to kind of become familiar, but I also think some people just have a natural knack for it. And that's what I felt like for me was really what drove kind of getting into it. And then the success that we've had is having a natural knack and then a business sense and also just like a very hard working approach. I mean, for the first like 5 years, I worked anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week and I had two little kids. I mean, it was a grind. It was gnarly. But I think where there is a lot of value is also understanding where your weaknesses are and then figuring out how you fill those gaps. So, for instance, because I didn't go to design school, I do not know how to do CAD, Revit. I know no programs. And again, inside scoop that not everybody knows because you would think that one would. And but these are really important things that I got by in the beginning with, some really scrappy drawings. But as we got bigger clients and, higher budgets and more expectations from the types of clients that we were getting, I had to up my game there. And so this is where hiring the right people, whether you're hiring an outside person for, kind of temporarily or bringing on a part-time or full-time employee, but that is ways that you can also give the confidence that you need, that your firm needs in order to be able to take on these projects. Because the reality is if you don't have the schooling, you are starting at a deficit and you have to make that up to then be able to be at a good starting point to begin growing. So I think that was just a huge lesson, was how much I had to invest into understanding it all, in studying and doing the schooling from home at night. It's one thing to say that you learn on the job, but it's so much more than that. I think if you learn on the job, then you're not growing at a pace that you need to in order to have that success. You have to take every opportunity outside of being on a job site, to learn and grow and understand more.
So, at what point did you sort of get somebody on your team or outsource to an external contractor, the sort of the design drawing stage of it? Was that one of your first hires? What did that look like?
So my first hire was actually a someone to run all of our accounting. It's like, I think to start the business as an entrepreneur, you have to be decent at everything. Doesn't mean you're going to be great at everything, but you got to be decent enough to get through while you're trying to save up enough to have that first hire. But the second that I could, I knew that that was something that I needed to pass off. Now, like I said, I was kind of making drawings work. I was using, random online programs. I had someone that did graphic design, so they actually helped me put together a lot of drawings. It's honestly so funny. Our team saw like a spec book that we had from, it was literally like 9 years ago, and we were like, I think they thought I was going to be embarrassed. I just saw it as the most immense growth, and we were like cry laughing because I was like, "Oh my gosh, it just looks so different than our like beautiful ID sets now with these amazing technical drawings." But hey, got by. And but I think that when I realized that accounting is underway, purchasing, is taken care of, that then I could more focus on the business and on the creative, which is really where I needed to be able to kind of focus back. And then with that refocus came more clients, bigger clients. And then that was my second hire, was another designer. And I was less focused on, does this person have all the creativity in the world? Because I knew that's what I could come to the table with. And what I did come to the table with, what I needed was someone that was technical, that could do those drawings, that could, manage more of the job site alongside me as well. So I think it really is valuable to say, okay, I'm going to start and make it work in the beginning, but as you grow, there are necessary things to spur that continued growth. And there are some, great people out there that can help you attain that.
And so, what does your team look like now? Can you sort of give us a little bit of an insight, behind the scenes look at who you've got on your team and how it's grown?
Yes. Absolutely. So it's definitely grown and evolved over the years. And then, as a counterpart to our studio, we also have our ecom shop that we started in 2020. And so we have kind of a handful of people on that team and then a handful of people on the studio team. We do intermingle. We are all in Slack together. We're friendly, but they are very much like separate teams. So I'll speak to more the studio side from that design perspective. So it's myself, and then we have our amazing creative director, and then we have two teams. We have fluctuated. We've tried a lot of different things. We've had times where there were three teams, four teams. Times when it was like one big team. You kind of have to figure out what is going to work for what service you're providing. But for us, where we have landed in our great sweet spot is that we have two design teams. Every team has one or two that are senior, and then one or two interior designers, and then we also have two full time purchasers. So essentially, we have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven designers, and then we have two purchasers, and then we have two full time Revit drafters. So that is another thing that we felt like was really valuable to our business was being able to let our really creative talent designers be able to focus more on design and hire people that were again very technical and could take on all the technical aspects. So everyone very much works together but has kind of their lane of their real strong suit, which has served us incredibly well rather than having, in the beginning, or I know other firms it's like they kind of have each design team handling a project from A to Z and everything in between. And I think that it's not playing to my personal philosophy is that it's not necessarily always playing to everyone's greatest strengths. And so I think because I learned early on to figure out my strengths and weaknesses and hire for that, I just kind of brought that into what we do here in our everyday as well. So yeah, that's our design team, and then we've got our marketing and our shop and all of that as well. But we have an amazingly talented team, which I think is something that as you're growing, you need to know that you know, depending on what you can afford, you're probably going to start with people that are a little bit more green, don't have as much experience. But as you grow and as your, income level becomes much higher, as you get those bigger projects, you're going to be able to hire on more stellar, talent. Whether it be their design or their technical or their people skills. I mean, you're going to get really well-rounded people when you can get to that stage, which is something we've been, very lucky to have in our team.
And so, what does your role look like in the business now? Can you give us a little bit of an insight
Whew.
into what does your involvement in the design process look like? What does a week look like? What does a day look like? A typical day? I know that they're probably all very different, but I'm sure that there are rhythms and
Yeah.
patterns to them.
There are rhythms. I know. Everyone jokes like you need to make a job description. Like it would be 14 pages long and none of it would make sense, but in my head like it's all linear. Like I've got it dialed in my head. But you know, as as the founder, as like, the face of the brand because it's my name, it's just comes with the territory of a lot of different categories and things that I'm touching. I think that I've really had to learn to adapt and be incredibly flexible over time because I think it started as like I was a designer and I worked with the clients, and that was like pretty much what I did with like a little bit of Instagram marketing. But as we've grown, obviously we have more clients. I can't handle that, workload and still give them the best service possible if it's just me. Then we have our shop. I can't design all the products and, keep everything flowing. So my typical, like I wouldn't say typical week, maybe just like if I look at it as a month, it's usually a variety of different things. But the biggest, I would say, maybe the biggest bites that I take are with our studio team. I oversee all of the design. I do all the initial, sales calls to get to know clients, to understand if we'd be good to work together. And then from there, I take the clients to the team and we develop what that inspiration is going to be like. It's incredibly important for me to be there in the beginning stages because I've gotten to know them and understood what they're looking for. And I want to cast that vision for what their home will look like. And then I'm involved in all the major milestone design moments. So finishes, furniture, installation and all of that. But our team is amazing at handling all of the site visits and construction questions and the daily point of contact. So with those two teams, they have each client has like one of them as their main daily contact. And then that allows me to still remain very creative, which ultimately is what our clients want. They don't want me bogged down in the details. They want, those of us that are higher in the design creative to kind of be able to stay there. So that is as far as projects, I'm very involved in that side. And I also do all the presentations. I love being able to cast the vision with the client and be a part of that process. And then on the shop side, I we are producing about 70% of our own furniture, which has been in like the last year and a half. So I design all the furniture along with our creative director. So that is a heavy load depending on the season. We launch 2 collections a year and then have some other collaborations in the works. So because of that, like there's a lot of head down moments with that. And then marketing, we've got an awesome marketing team, but I still am very heavily involved in that as far as the brand and all of that. But I feel like it's while I'm touching a lot of different things, we have like a really great foundational team underneath that allows me to dip in when I need to dip in into those certain areas. And sometimes some seasons look like heavier in the studio or heavier in the shop. And it's all about kind of trying to balance that.
Yeah, amazing. A busy woman. And so I do want to get more into the shop part of it in a moment, but let's just stay with the design for a
Yeah.
little bit longer. And so as you mentioned, you said around that kind of after you'd had about 3 clients, that's where you started to find it a bit of a challenge of like,
Mhm.
okay, how do I keep getting more clients and growing this business? So how did you overcome that
Mhm.
hurdle? And then what does your client, I guess, for one of a better word, acquisition or lead process look like now? Is it
Mhm.
majority referrals? What is it looking like for you now? And are you also, I mean, obviously you've got a much bigger presence on social media. Are you getting lots of inquiries and you're actually almost vetting them to see, okay, this is the right fit for us? And then, how do you kind of kindly and gently sort of say, you know, maybe this is not right for us?
Yes. Well, starting with that first piece, I think why it felt more challenging with those, third, fourth, fifth clients, was because again, I had this like lucky moment where I posted on Instagram and these people that I knew, came to me. And so it really was happening very organically. I was very open to it, but that part kind of fell in my lap. Then it was like, okay, I'm doing this and now there's competition and I don't just know everybody in the world to come to me. So now I need to start marketing and getting myself out there. And that's why it felt like a big hurdle. I also think there's a lot of grace in the first couple projects. I mean, they knew I was, figuring it out. And a couple of them have kindly said that it didn't seem that way. But then funny enough, this our first client that we just took through our process now as we finished their home a year ago, they were like, whoa, that was dramatically different. And I'm like, I know. And it was fun to like be able to feel the growth with them that they've gotten to see from when it was just me, and then now with a full team behind it. But that is, I think, why it felt so challenging was because then I felt like I had to do the hard work of actually getting clients, which felt harder in the moment than the design piece of it. Instagram has and continues to be a really strong resource for us. We have always had to adapt and be flexible and move with whatever the algorithm is doing, which is challenging. And we do have someone that helps me run that, but I'm still pretty personally involved in it to the degree that I can be while also, running the business side of things. And yeah, but I think that the the biggest leads that I got in the beginning were because of Instagram. And it was probably like even 95% in the beginning. I mean, probably for the first few years. Now because we had a lot of clients through and we have a lot of relationships, it's a lot of referrals, but still there's a good majority of Instagram. And I think what has been unique about that is it's allowed us to hop far outside of California. So we've done Tennessee, New York, Utah, Austin, um, we're kind of a little bit of everywhere. There's like, several different states that we're in, and it's fun to be able to do those. And I don't think that those opportunities would have come only from word of mouth, right around here, but now word of mouth is coming in those different states too, with different clients that we've gotten to work with. Um, yeah, so I feel like for kind of that pocket is that. Now I think that when it comes to the actual clients and how I really grew, was I feel like there is so much power in just saying no. And I think that in the beginning it's very easy to want to say yes. And look, I get it. There were moments where I did have to say yes to things because financially, you need it. So it's not I don't think that we all get to exist in this glory land where the finances aren't a part of it and we just get to build the business. There are so many realities that come with that. And so there are sacrifices that you have to make in that. But I think that when it comes to the clientele, I was very focused on who I wanted to work for. And I think that's the most valuable thing that you can do when you're setting out, is like, what is what age are they, where do they like to travel, what, everything, like make up a character of who you think this person would be. And that is going to help give you what their demographic is, and also where you can start to find those types of people. And I think that it's also tempting to take on anything and everything, and there is value to that. But for us, for what I was doing, I really saw it as an opportunity to say, less is more. I'm going to take on the bigger projects, and I'm going to have less of them. So we've always done about like 12 to 15 projects a year, and they've varied in size. Now they're much larger. So we kind of just have decided to really stay on the more boutique side of things, because we really care about each and every detail. But I think that could only come because I was willing to say no. Now those times in between clients, or when you need another job, you need another lead, those are incredibly stressful moments when you're not just taking, everything that's coming your way. But at the same time, it helps you focus and put your energy towards the right things. But it is a risk, and it is, it's a hard risk to be able to sit with. So with Instagram, we would get like, and still do, about like 30 to 40 inquiries a month. And, we take usually about 12 projects a year. So we had to get really good at kind of, saying no in the most polite way. And we have, we definitely have a process for that. And over time we developed more of a process. Like, you got to go fill out the form on our website, which has budget requirements, so you kind of, people can kind of weed themselves out. But it also comes down to what their personality is going to be like. So even if they feel like a fit on paper, it's all about getting to know them, in person or on a Zoom, to make sure that they feel like they're going to be a fit for the couple years that you're gonna be with them. But I think that there's always very nice ways to politely decline projects.
Just quickly, if you're new to me and the podcast, I have 4 books that I've created for you to help break down the biggest lessons I've learned over the past 15 years working in the interiors industry. The first, This Is Home, has more than 1,000 5-star reviews on Amazon and has almost a perfect score. And more than 5 years since its release, continues to be a bestseller for interior and home design on Amazon. I share this because I've put thousands of hours into creating all of my books. I put my heart and soul into each one to help you on your journey to creating a home that's beautiful and authentic and makes you feel good every time you step through the front door. This Is Home is part of a trilogy that includes Still, the Slow Home, and Style, the Art of Creating a Beautiful Home. So I encourage you to check them out if you haven't already. And Home by the Sea, my 4th book, includes my own home and is all about loving where you live. I hope you find them valuable and they help you on your journey. You can buy them on Amazon or support your local bookseller. Now back to the show. Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear the volume of inquiries you get through Instagram, and then having that filter
Yeah.
on your form on the website sounds like, it would be really helpful in that process. So what does your business look like now? I mean, obviously we've gone from those very early days where you're charging an hourly rate. What sort of pricing model do you use now with your clients? And at what point do you feel that it really was there a tipping point where you kind of went, I can't keep charging hourly and I'm going to now do this new price model? Or was it more fluid and it sort of changed and evolved gradually over the years?
It definitely changed and evolved over the years, and I feel like I had to experiment with a lot of different ways for what worked for us and what worked for the scope that we take on. And that is something that has been an evolution because of that. And I think that there's no one size fits all because it really does depend on the scope that you are giving. We are very hands on in every single detail, but there comes a point where the hourly rate is not as transparent to the clients up front. And I feel like what's really important is to build that trust in the relationship up front. And I think being more candid about the pricing model, and how what their ultimate end line item is going to be is really powerful in the start of that relationship. So how we function now with it is we have figured out between several different projects, we have figured out what kind of our average hours are spent in each part of our process. Then we now charge a flat fee for the design side. So that means for everything that we are designing, for the inspiration, for the finishes, the furniture, and the install. That is all included in one flat fee. What I like about that is they know what they're signing on for to get our creative talents, and we know that we're valuing that appropriately based on how much time it typically does take. And again, we vet our clients pretty well to know at this point if they're going to take a lot of time or not a lot of time. And we love the ones that just trust us and don't take as much time. So we know that, if we're bringing on the right clients, we know what it's going to kind of take time wise, for our entire team. And then we do charge hourly for all the site visits and any meetings with contractors or subs. The reason for this was we quickly learned that that is a variable we cannot control. Absolutely cannot control that. I can control what our typical timeline is, for design, how long it will typically take, how long our ID set takes for our team, our Revit, all of that. I cannot control whether they have a great contractor or a not great contractor. And we all want to work with the great ones, but it's just not the reality. And now that we're working in different states, we're getting to know a lot of different architects and builders and such, but we don't have as much of a trusted relationship to go, oh, they get our plans and they know how to just execute. Some of them need a lot of handholding. So that is something that's worked very well for us. And it's also encouraged clients to hire the right contractor because it does mean that it won't take as much of our time. But for those projects that, like, the design is there, the ID set is there, everything is there, but they still need so much hand holding, or maybe they're not used to quite as much custom detail and you have to step into so many of those moments, that takes so much time that you just can't account for any other way than hourly. So that's something that works for us. But again, we've had enough projects and enough research to say this is our flat fee because we know generally what it's going to be around. But it's, I think, a way that makes our clients feel like it's a very open and trusting relationship with their resources. It's like, this is what you're going to get for our design. And then the rest, it's like they understand because they can see the writing on the wall too when, their contractor maybe isn't, on top of it. And so it becomes very understandable and they want us there at the end of the day to make sure every detail is coming to place.
And I just want to ask you on those remote projects, the ones in the different states, in
Mhm.
terms of managing those and I guess charging the time, the travel time. Obviously, it's a
Yep.
completely different environment. You're dealing with contractors that you maybe haven't dealt with before. What goes
Mhm.
into making those run well and making money on those projects? Or, obviously being compensated for your time and the travel time and all of the costs associated with it.
Of course. I mean, I love design, but I love to travel. I love to get paid healthy so that we can, live life. I got two kids. So, yes, all about how to structure a business that, is your passion met with being able to be sustainable and grow and have the lifestyle that you want. And I think that um with those out of state projects, that was a learning curve at first because it feels different when a project is 5 minutes away from me in Newport Beach than when something is much further. And we didn't know in the beginning how many site visits we would need and things like that. We now have that down to a science. Our first big out of state project was in 2020, all the way across the country in New York. Now we've done them so many places, we know the rhythm, but we typically will still charge the way that we do for a flat fee. And then for the management of the construction, it just looks different because we might not be on the site, but it's usually the Monday morning calls. Our team will set up like Monday morning management calls with each contractor and any sub so that they are set up for the week. So generally that's we're charging for that time that we're doing even though it's from afar. We usually include 2 site visits in our flat fee when it is out of state or anywhere out of this area. And then of course they pay for lodging, travel, per diem and all of that. And then they are always welcome to have us come out more. Generally the 2 gets the job done. We have certain times when we go out where it's aligned really nicely and we kind of can make the most of our time. But occasionally they want us to come out a little bit more, sometimes for their own peace of mind. So we had a couple of clients that have done that, and at that point they just pay for an hourly, like a day rate for the time, depending on who's going out. So, but yeah, that's another learning curve, and especially when you're excited. Like I remember I was so excited when I got that first out of town project, out of state, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so exciting. And then you realize that you're leaving your family for 3 days to go to a site visit, and you're staying in hotels, and you're in New York and everything's really expensive to pay for. And so suddenly you go, okay, I need to rearrange this so that it makes sense. And the clients that really want you, that value you over someone else that's in their town, will understand that. But it also takes time to, of course, grow to that clientele.
Yeah. And I wanted to just ask you as well about press and what role that has played in your growth,
Hmm.
how you have approached that, and what's worked really well for you.
Yes. Well, it's that's also been an evolution, and I think that comes with the growth of your company, the growth of your resources. But in the beginning, it really was just Instagram. Now, I don't feel like people can have it the exact same way now because when I started, it was 9.5 years ago, and it was just a very different time to get seen on Instagram. And I didn't even try that hard in those beginning days, but Instagram was, kind of our biggest piece there. Now, as as we continued to grow, I realized that in order to just have a little bit more credibility, I was going to need to have our projects featured in different things. I was going to need to be able to have those kind of stamps of approval, if you will, things that I could say that we, were featured in, which honestly trumps the fact that I haven't had any schooling, because they know that it's like, that you've been recognized for your work. So in kind of the beginning middle, I was submitting all of our own stuff and crossing my fingers hoping for the best, sometimes getting to the right people, sometimes not. Sometimes they were smaller publications or little online features. But now over the last year and a half, we started working with a PR agency, and that has been huge for us because there is more power in them having more contacts, more resources, more opportunities that we may not have while we're, focused on what we're focused on over here. I think too, like getting even kind of one-off digital pieces. I might have submitted for a bigger feature and got that bigger feature, and then I probably most of the times would just stop there, where they are continuing to get those pieces, continued features out there more and more. And so I think that there is more of an online presence that we have because of the amount of features that we've received. And then also you know getting in magazines, on the covers of magazines, those are very hard unless you know the people at the magazine, of which I didn't. So this last year and a half has been great for us as far as getting additional, higher end type of coverage with PR.
And do you see a flow on effect from that? Is it you're getting more inquiries, people are discovering you that way, or is it more you feel that it helps the shop side of the business?
That's a great question. I feel like this is one of those moments that when we signed on, we were like, okay, we don't really know what our return on investment is going to be. And you can't necessarily perfectly know what that's going to be. But I will say that we have felt that. And I think that it's also got to be with the right people that jive with you. We had a PR agency before that we were not receiving that traction. And the difference in just like feeling like we were getting out there more was pretty dramatic. Um, Since we don't have 60 projects a year, our feature opportunities for our studio are farther and fewer between. So we might have like a couple months where there's no studio features to capture, but then we'll have a month at the end of the year that has like three or four. So it very much ebbs and flows. So we've had them, and a big reason why we brought them on was for our shop side, to help us scale that side of it, get a lot of PR. That was, it's newer, it's younger, and so that was a really important piece. So I would say for kind of the month in, month out, our shop is getting a lot of press, a lot of features, a lot of eyes on it. And then our studio pops off when we have those bigger features from an actual, project. But I think that, it's always hard to know exactly where a sale has come from. But I think that there is an incredible, immense amount of value that you kind of have to just like know that if you're growing, there's so many different pieces that are helping that growth. And even though you can't say like I made X amount from this, the opportunities that fall on top of each other are the clear indication to me that that things are working, and that you're getting out there.
And so, with the shop, what made you decide to do that, to introduce that as an element within your business? And what have been some of the big lessons you've learned on that journey? Because, like you say, you're involved with
Yes.
the process of creating products. That can be very time consuming. You can have very long lead times.
Hmm.
So, can you share a little bit about that part of your business?
Absolutely. Well, this is where my husband actually enters the picture. So, like I said, we got married at 21 and 23. We're going on 16 years of marriage in a month. And we have decided in 2020 of all times, actually, it was like 2019, at the end of 2019, we decided we were going to work together. And then the pandemic hit, and somehow we're still here. Uh, we still love each other through it all. But this is a unique piece for me in the business, and it actually all started. We go to this conference with my family every year. It's a philanthropic conference. You get to hear about different organizations and what they're up to and how they're changing the world, and it is incredibly inspiring. And I feel like it's such a great way for us and our kids to get out of our Newport bubble and our lives to kind of see what else is going on in the world and how we can support those different organizations. Well, they also have these breakout groups of different inspiring topics. And I went to a couple of those, and we all kind of end up splitting up and then like meeting back up to talk about it. And so as I was going through my day, I just got totally inspired to do something different with the business. And I love design. I always knew I wanted to do that, but there was something that was like itching inside of me that wanted to do something that could impact the world a little bit differently, even if it's a small slice of the earth. And so we went to happy hour that night with my whole family. I have a big family. And I was like, I think I want to start, a shop. And my husband was at the time kind of looking for a career change. And he was like, I think I'm going to do it. And I was like, no way, because I certainly wasn't going to have the time. So we joined forces, and he initially came on to just run the shop side. Then there was so much crossover between the studio and the shop business that now he runs all of the business and I run all of the creative. And I think where that has been really helpful is that I do get to stick to the creative on, the shop side of things. But there has been really the pivotal moment of wanting to make that change was because I wanted to find a way to be able to give back. So, a portion of our sales goes to a nonprofit that does microloans for underserved people throughout different areas, especially like Rwanda and Uganda. And it's been really cool to see the impact that we've been able to make, and the direct impact to families and individuals over there, and just how they have been able to continue to, use that to help their own communities. So that was a passion piece. And I think that we found out that not everyone shares the exact same passion. Sometimes people just want furniture. So we're here for that. And it's more of a passion project for my husband and I in that way. But when we started, my husband always loves to like still laugh about this because that night, like we decided at happy hour, like we were gonna work together. This was it. And we still have a photo that my dad took because he was like, this is a big moment. And we had like our conference like badges on, like these huge badges, and we're like, smiling, and it was really cool because it was the start of something. And so that night we're, brainstorming, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna teach women in the area. I'm going to teach them how to sew and how to do pottery and how to make things. And my husband's like, do you do any of those things? I'm like, no. So he's like, yeah, that's not going to work. So even over those first few months of figuring out what our impact was going to be, it had to evolve and change. But then when we decided that was going to kind of be our purpose, then it was like, how do we get this thing, off the ground? And so at first we did um, third party wholesalers. That was the majority of what we did, forehands and all of those companies alike. And I just quickly began to see that, especially in 2020, when people were trying to figure out other opportunities for income, there was a lot of designers that were popping up with, online shops, e-commerce, and they were doing a lot of the same things. Obviously, we were just like kind of one in a batch of a bunch of designers that decided to do, drop ship type things. And I quickly was like, if we want to stand out and we want to be different, just like our studio, like I had to make our studio different and stand out to have that success. I was like, I think we need to do something different and stand out and make our own products. So within the first year, we kind of started to explore what that was going to look like, how it would operate. And now we are a full, well oiled machine. But it took a lot of, my husband really figuring out who we were going to work with, especially when you're working overseas. You don't necessarily, know how it's going to operate or who to work with the different factories. And so, huge learning curve, but we're grateful to be in the spot where we are, where we have that dialed. But again, that took like 3 years of really overcoming a lot of trial and error to figure out. And on our shop team, we have our marketing, a couple of our marketing people that really help. They do marketing for the studio as well, but focus a lot on when we have launches. Like we're in the middle of a launch right now, just launched yesterday our latest collection, and so they're in the midst of all of that. Then we have someone that runs our website. We've got a buyer. We've got customer service, which is obviously huge. My husband really still does oversee all of that, the operational side of it, and then I design all the furniture, which, like you said, is can be a very heavy lift. When we're in the middle of designing those, and right now we are working. We're wrapping up um, fall 25, and then we'll be looking into spring of 26. So we're definitely had to catch up and get much farther ahead as far as designing it, getting prototypes, sampling, and then to the actual end product.
And would you say, I mean, is it 50-50 roughly the revenue that you get from both of those businesses, or is a shop, much smaller? Like, what's the kind of rough breakdown with the revenue from those two different businesses?
That's
Or is it more
such
of
a
a
great
profit,
question. Yeah,
or is it more of a profit thing? Because obviously you can probably
yeah.
get a lot of revenue from the shop, but it's like, which is the breakdown of the business model?
Absolutely. Yes. In full transparency, our studio is still where we gain the most of our profit. We have built ourselves to a spot where we work with people that have very nice budgets. And so as most of you guys will know, majority of what we make is on our furniture. But our furniture budgets are nice, and we do a lot of custom furniture pieces for our clients as well. So that's still, because it's older, because it's been around longer, more established, that still is our kind of main driver of profit right now. Now the shop is something that is profitable and it's growing. It's something that we invest a lot back into, and I think that that is the piece um that feels different for people, because it's like, in order to grow it, you just have to keep risking and pouring back into it. So that is still like our little baby that we're growing, and is getting some amazing and fun traction. And it's really cool, some of the opportunities that we've got coming up. But it's still in, like, I mean, I feel like our team would even say, like, some days we still feel like a little startup, where it's a small team. We all wear many hats in it, but we have these, in both sides of our business, employees who are willing to just do whatever it takes and step into anything. And I think that that side note is another very valuable piece when you're hiring people, is hiring people who are team players that will do whatever job, needs to be done.
And is all of your team based where you live? Like, do you have a physical studio and an office for both of those businesses so it's Newport, California, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So our offices are in Costa Mesa, so right next to Newport, right next to where I live, and we do have a studio. So, which I still remember. Again, I was like working at a Starbucks, and then I was like working at a co-working desk, and then I got like an office in the co-working space. We slowly kept moving, so now we're in about like 5,000 square feet, and we have a very inspiring and fun studio that we fully built out. We do have all of our designers here, so we feel like the greatest design collaboration happens when we are in person. We did get to test the waters in COVID, right? Like we all were afar in our different hubs of homes and dropping off samples and plastic wrapped bits and trying to get things around to each other. And I felt like while we survived that time, I did not feel that our greatest creativity was thriving. I felt like we had to push a lot harder to get that creative juice as a team. And so, just one of my design philosophies is that I think that the more design heads you can get in the room, the better a project will be. That's why I love, that we've got more of a full team and it's not only me. But I do believe that it has to be in person for us to have the greatest sense of collaboration and the greatest service that we can offer our clients. Our shop team, though, is all remote except for our warehouse lead, which we have our warehouse in Costa Mesa as well. So he is there, but he's the only one on our shop that is local, and then everyone else is throughout. So yeah, from
Amazing.
San Diego to Arizona, kind of everywhere, Tennessee, yeah, and they're just different business models. They're different businesses in a lot of ways, and so while they have the tie of furniture and creativity and design, as far as how they function are two very different things.
Yeah, interesting. And so, before we get into the final questions, I just want to ask this one of you, which is, I mean, you've spoken about investing in your business by working with a PR agency. What other
Mhm.
ways have you invested in either yourself or in your business? Have you had coaching? Have you had other ways that you've invested in your business that you've really seen that it's been, instrumental or really helped you grow it?
Absolutely. So a few years ago, we got a business coach, and that was really incredibly helpful. It was what helped really design the path that we are on. I think that there's always a moment where you've grown to the capacity that you can grow without having outside voices in the room with you. And so for us, getting that business coach was very valuable, helped us kind of dream bigger, dream 10 years out and kind of scale back from there of how it's going to look to actually achieve that and get there. I think that there's a great sense of encouragement and inspiration that can come from having a business coach. And I think that people often think, oh, I need someone that is like a coach that's a designer. You can have like a mentor that's a designer, but if you're going to grow a successful business, it's going to require a lot more on the business side than anyone wants to think when you get into it. And so I think that was very valuable. Also, my husband and I, when we got the business coach, we were just starting to work together. And so we really needed to navigate how we were going to work together, whose lane was going to be what, because I'm sure any other married couple out there or those that are thinking about it, that's such an important piece when you're working, whether it be a really close friend or with a spouse, being able to have even just someone else come in and say, hey, I think this is where you're really, talented and you should lean this way, you should lean that way, to really find your right path. So I feel like that was a huge investment for a few years that we did, and we still call her every once in a while for check-ins. And then we've had some of our employees want to have like further learning on different things or conferences. So we've sent them to some of those. And in the early days, I couldn't afford much of anything to invest in, my learnings. But I did everything that I could. And I just really immersed myself into the business. I was very eager to learn everything about interior design and really hone my craft. But there are definitely ways that you can be investing. And again, PR or an outside marketing consultant can also be really incredible to help you grow. These are things that I feel like you just slowly add on as you feel like you're ready for that next stage of growth.
Yeah, amazing. All right, let's get into the final questions. I'm so grateful for the time that you've been sharing with us today, and it's been amazing. All right, so these
Oh,
are, kind of slightly rapid fire, depending on how quickly you want to go through them, and just really what comes first to
okay.
mind. So no pressure. The first one
I
is
know, right?
which 5 words best describe you?
5 words. Okay. I would say risk taker. I'm a very big risk taker, and I feel like that's come in handy in building a business because you have to be willing to step outside your box and really risk a lot of things. Highly creative. I love, being more on the innovative side of design. Something people don't know about me is that I'm very introverted. Everyone thinks because of social media and because of, my business and what I do and speaking things, everyone thinks that I'm very extroverted, but I'm very much like an introverted extrovert. Like I love being around people, but then I need like 4 days to recover with a book and my cat. Like I need to have that downtime. So my husband is like the very social, could like be around people all day long. So that's an always an interesting little tidbit. um, I used to love to be spontaneous. Now I just say I'm like I'm planned spontaneous. So it's I got 2 kids, business, the whole thing. But I still love to, travel and do different things, but it's a little bit more planned out now. And the thing that my husband always hates that I admit, but I'm like obsessed with cats. We have a cat and I just love our cat and love to read with her. So those are some things that describe me.
Amazing. Love it. Love it. What's the best lesson that you've learned on your journey so far? Life, business, maybe one of each?
Yeah. I feel like the biggest lesson I always feel is just like focusing on the long game. I think that I've had moments in my career, like I know today we're talking about the growth and all these things that have happened, but I had a moment where a client and I parted ways, and it was incredibly like hard and such a bummer. And there was a variety of reasons, but and variety of reasons why it was good for both of us. But there are these pit moments that kind of throw you off, and do you feel like they throw you off your game and your momentum. But being able to focus on the long game and knowing that that experience was there for a reason and it's meant to not be there for a reason as well.
Yeah, love that. Love that. What's your proudest achievement?
Huh. Okay, I feel like this is something that I keep like, along the way, different things happen and I achieve, and it's exciting. And I would say the most recent one is the amount of furniture that we are producing for our shop. I think I never, we do a lot of custom pieces for clients, but I never really imagined that we would be producing a lot of our own pieces and designing them. And it's a hustle and a grind to do it, but it's been really exciting to see it. And what we're creating for our studio isn't stuff that everyone can afford that level of customization in their home. So the shop is an opportunity to really reach just kind of a broader audience as well. And that's been really fun to see like a piece of our creativity out there in a different way.
Yeah, great. What's been your best decision or one of your best decisions?
Hands down, I've said this in the beginning, I still will always say it, is like hiring people that have a different or more skill than you. I think that people get in this mindset of like it's all got to be on them, and they got to be good at everything. And I think that the best decision that you can make is to set aside that money so that you can hire other people that have a different or better skill that can help you grow.
Who inspires you?
Hmm. I mean, from like a design perspective, Kelly Wersler, of course, is an inspiration. I will say, like, I don't gravitate towards like her style personally. I think what I really appreciate and enjoy is the risk that she has in design, and the her like foundational pieces. And I just think that it's a very interesting and inspiring approach.
What are you passionate about other than your cats or your cat?
Um, is it bad to say design? I just love it.
That's great. You're in the right job.
I
what
know.
dr-
I know. I mean, I love design. Again, it comes with so many things, right? The business side, there's ups and downs, but at the end of the day, like I'm just still so passionate about design.
what dream do you still want to fulfill?
I would love to either do a boutique hotel or do like a branded Airbnb experience, which would be, I think, really fun to be able to build out.
Love it.
So on the near future list.
What are you reading? What's either on your bedside table or nightstand, I should say, for Americans,
Yeah.
or your coffee table, or maybe one of both?
Um, yes. Okay, well, admittedly, most of what I read are like murder mysteries. So that's a lot of what I'm consumed by. But I also enjoy some business books here and there. I love, I know that some people are like, oh, coffee table books just sit there on people's coffee tables. I love flipping through them. I love the inspiration it brings. But I'm a Kindle girl at the end of the day with all my lineup of murder mysteries.
What's one of your more recent business books that you've read that you got a lot of value out of?
I'm trying to remember what it was called. I'm gonna have
Was
to
the
come back to. I'm
author?
gonna have to remember what it was called. Oh, it's
Can you
gonna kill
remember
me that
the
I can't
author?
think of it. I'm gonna. No, I can't even remember the author. Um, it will hopefully come to me in a second.
That's okay. We can circle back to
It's like
that.
a yellow book, and okay, we'll come back.
Yellow book. Okay. What are you listening to? Do you like listening to podcasts or otherwise audiobooks? What do you like to listen to?
Yes, I love podcasts. I have more time to listen to podcasts than I do to read. So I think that's why why I love, podcasts and audiobooks a lot more is just immersing myself in that on a long drive to LA or something. So something I love is how I built this. And it's, hearing from other entrepreneurs on this podcast and how they've built their companies. And I love hearing kind of their success stories, but also their pitfalls as well, because I think it's really important to keep that in mind as people are aiming for different goals. So that's one I really love.
And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Mm. I would probably say embrace the lows. I think that my younger self, like think about myself 9 years ago starting the company or even 5 years ago, and I would get so easily crushed by like a low moment, whether it be something, business wise, something with a client. I would take client stuff so personally and I would just like really sit in those lows. And now when things happen, I really have a different mindset and appreciation. I can see that there is a reason for the low. There is something that is going to come from it. There is a growth period out of this. And so I think that you can only really gain that perspective once you've gone through enough lows to realize that like good comes from it, or it makes you pivot or whatever it might be. But I wish that I would have embraced more lows, and that my younger self could have had that forethought to say, okay, like there's the lows feel so heavy and hard, but sometimes they don't need to feel that way when you see what's on the other side.
That's great advice. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindy. I appreciate your
Of
time, your
course.
honesty, sharing your journey. I think it's so invaluable. I think that, your younger self would really appreciate listening to someone who's further ahead of her
Uh,
on her journey. And I hope that many of the listeners do as well. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
well, thank you so much for having me. I very much appreciate it and enjoyed being here.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.